Alrighty, folks. Community banks down 6% on Friday. Are we seeing a repeat of Silicon Valley Bank where there's just a huge run on the bank and they suddenly vaporize? Or is it something else? Do we have banking crisis 2.0? Taylor, what say you?
Yeah, so I think that to start, I'll draw a line of delineation of where I think the discrepancy is between what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and what's happening right now. So Silicon Valley Bank was largely just a liquidity mismatch where
Correct.
people were depositing money and it was coming in very rapidly with Silicon Valley Bank, for the record, and they were just investing it all. And it wasn't necessarily a concern with, hey, what they invested in was low quality. It wasn't. It was mostly high quality stuff. It was just that when people came and asked for withdrawal back, it wasn't liquid enough to quickly get capital back and give it to people who want money back from their bank that they deposited money with. Right? Shocker. They want the ability to give in, take money out, their money. Whereas on this side, I think what you see with Zion's, what you see with a couple of the other banks that are getting squeezed right now is, I think it's more of a quality of credit. Did you do your credit research when you lent money to XYZ institution like Triricolor, like First Brands? And we could talk about them. But I think it's more of people now becoming skeptical that they got too loose with their lending and they were willing to lend to any Tom, Dick, and Harry out there, regardless of what their underlying credentials were.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually see it the same way. It would be really cool to say banking crisis 2.0 and kind of draw a line between Silicon Valley Bank and what happened at Zion's and others, but it's just not the same, right? If we go back in the time machine and kind of piece together how Silicon Valley Bank blew up, again, as you said, they had a lot of money coming in, right? Leverage and IPOs and just they had, millions and millions and millions of dollars. They obviously had poor risk management. Let's admit that. And they threw all of that capital into U.S. Treasuries, or a lot of it. And then then Jerome Powell goes to Jackson Hole and says, pain is coming. And, when you own a bunch of treasuries at 1% that are suddenly 4%, that asset value falls. You can quote unquote hold to maturity, which I'm sure is what they did. But when people come back and ask for money and you're now a forced seller, that's just how that blew up. It was a poor risk management. It was a balance sheet problem. And, they deserve to blow up, frankly, right? Because of risk management. But that's not what we saw.
And you just did a great job of drawing a kind of law. This again.
You gotta watch those hand gestures.
Oh my gosh. I have to figure this out rather. You guys are going to get close up with me here. I think that you did a good job of drawing a line of delineation there, because what we had there was, you mentioned the treasury kind of mismatch, right. And that is largely what happened. So it was a function of two things that caused the illiquidity or lack of desire to liquidity at the price. It was the treasury, and then the other bonds. They had a fairly significant position in other bonds that were just outright illiquid too. So great job. And you're right. More of that exposure was a function of them not wanting to have to create liquidity on treasuries that were just not priced correctly at that.
Yeah. So Silicon Valley Bank blew up because it should have, right? You don't have access to capital, your balance sheet blows up, banks go bust. But that's not what happened at Zion's and these other places. And, I love Jamie Dimon, Warren Buffett. Both of them have said recently there's never one cockroach, which I think is accurate, right? Zion won't be the last, bank to identify, a significant loss because of bad underwriting or all out fraud, right? All of this is going to be coming out. But when I step back and look at that, that's no different than any cycle. In every banking cycle we go through, we have some banks that, either A, didn't do their due diligence like they used to, or B, their borrowers were fraud. And sometimes that's hard to find out. I mean, go back and look at my painful history with WorldCom and Enron. Both of them were audited by big five accounting firms and on the New York or on the exchanges. I mean, it can happen if you have a bad actor. So, I think a lot more of that's coming, but to me, it's just like, that's the course of business. It's not some outside force like Jerome Powell saying, thou shall be paid. It's very different.
It's a very competitive industry is the reality of it, the banking industry.
Yeah.
So if you can't get a loan from here, then you take it somewhere else, and they're either competing on price or they're competing on willingness to lend. And that's the reality of it. It's one of those two things. And competing on price is competing on margin and profitability, or you're willing to lend to someone that someone else is not willing to lend to, and you get the business and therefore make the money and they don't. But everyone's willing to lend to a pristine borrower.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. So when you start to differentiate in willingness to loan, all of a sudden you wind up potentially with with not looking at all of the underlying details. Tricolor is a very interesting business. So Tricolor essentially made, provided car financing. And so you need car financing, you go to them, they go and they take a loan on the other end. Well, the reality
they basically, folks, they borrowed at 6, they lent at 16. Right.
Correct.
And they made this spread. But
Correct.
There's a wrinkle. Go ahead.
Yeah, the wrinkle is they borrowed on the same underlying collateral from multiple banks. And fraud. That's the definition of fraud. Like, I used an example in one of the videos I did recently that, like, the layman could consider this like, hey, I need a mortgage to buy this house, and I go to 4 different banks on the same house, and then I'm not able to pay, and 4 banks show up looking for my keys. And that's exactly what's playing out now, except for they had 25,000 creditors, which is bananas.
Yeah,
that's how you know you're getting really creative, when you have to go to 25,000 folks to get the financing you need.
Yeah, it'll be fun to go back and do a Harvard Business Review on Tricolor. This is what I think is going to happen. They're going to find out that they started with all the best intentions, and then they got greedy and stupid.
Yep. Either that, and it's probably a combination of that, or the latter, which is they realized they were making bad loans. They were financing people who couldn't pay, and therefore they started to get underwater and started to self-perpetuate the problem of going out and saying, hey, we're not doing well here. Instead of owning up to the fact that we didn't make good loans, let's go out and get a little bit of money here to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah. Well, if we step back and look at a problem you and I, or I'm going to call it a problem, we'll see what you say. Something we've talked about over the last year or so is the spread between Class A paper or pristine and junk has collapsed. And that, generally speaking, folks, every time does not end well. And suddenly cockroaches show up. I think this is just the beginning, in my opinion.
I will give the counterpoint to that in the fact that I've heard this come up multiple times, that when you look at, so one of the things that we look at, and one of the reasons that I'm less scared of this becoming a more systemic type event, is high yield spreads. So you take the treasury, and how much above the treasury are people forcing borrowers to pay based on their credit risk. And so high yield is junk. It's lower quality stuff. And the high yield spread is still razor thin. It's at 300 basis points, 3%, which is really, really
skinny.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and it has not blown out at all. And one of the reasons, because that's not always a good thing. That means, okay, banks are really willing to take risk without much reward on it.
Yeah, I want to see where you take this, because that's exactly what I'm pointing at, saying I've been here before. I've seen this movie. It doesn't end well. Go all the way back to Michael Milken, right? The inventor of junk bonds. And you saw the collapse there. So I want to know, I'd love to finish that thought on why you're not concerned.
Yeah. So the argument is that it is the highest quality junk bond market there's ever been. That's the argument. And so think about this. And I know we're laughing.
I'm getting Fed vibes. The banks are highly liquid, or whatever the hell they used to say in the GFC. There's no concern here.
I love it. Come on, I love it. So the argument, I'll continue the argument.
And I actually right now.
As much as we laugh about this, I actually tend to agree that there is some merit to this. And the fact is that just as you've had the private credit, private lending space amplify, you've had a lot of the lower quality stuff taken off of the traditional high yield type plate.
Oh, interesting.
So it's because it's not because everything in general is systemically higher quality. It's the fact that the lower end has been eaten into by the private lending. Which is why BDCs, on the other hand, have gotten their faces ripped off recently.
So again, that's why you're the Wall Street veteran. I think that is an interesting counterfactual that I did not know. So I want to repeat it just to make sure I understand it. So historically speaking, the junk space, that was only play, like if you couldn't get junk, you didn't have an alternative.
Correct.
What you're saying now is there is an alternative, and it's called private credit. Yep. So if you go to get your junk and they don't like it, now you just go to an alternative. So what I think you're saying is the junk of the junk that can't get it is going private credit.
Well put. And it's often referred to as a shadow banking industry as well.
Yeah.
And so, full disclosure, we have significant exposure to private credit with our clients. And you would think like, oh my God, you got to be nervous as all hell. there is a massive discrepancy between good managers and bad ones in the private credit space. And to be clear, I'm not saying we're a good private credit manager. We farm it out. We buy,
Right.
we go to shops that have expertise in it. And the bad ones right now are getting nuked badly. And the good ones are holding up just fine.
So, okay, I love this. So again, it's taking my history with, Michael Milken and junk bonds and all of that. I should now flip that in my head and read about private credit, because that's where the cockroaches probably are.
I think it's even more so in the BDC, business development company space.
BDC,
even more so. And if you look up, there are public BDCs, there are private BDCs. You can look up public BDCs. It's ugly.
Okay.
It's ugly. They're the ones
that's I know there's pain out there. I know there's fraud. I know there's lack of underwriting. I know it's there. We have more money in the system, which means pain is coming. And I want to know where to look. And the reason I want to look here is because there are some doomers who have experience in the debt market that are saying we're about to go through something larger than 2008. Right? There is a doomer called Melody Wright. She has a very unique experience in credit that I don't have. And she is now openly saying what has now started is going to be bigger than 2008. And I don't have the intricacies of the market to refute what she's saying, because that's her world.
I can give you some kind of credence or lack thereof to that comment. I will give it the lack thereof. Is that the private credit space, I believe, is about a $600 billion space. The mortgage
only $600 billion.
Correct. The mortgage-backed security space pre-08 was something like 1.4, 1.5 trillion. Yeah, and by the way, money is, 2x what it was back then. So
correct.
This is a quarter of the size. So the systemic nature of it.
Okay.
And it also is just, it isn't even just that. It's the fact that, okay, say the 600 billion goes to zero, like that would be painful in places in the market. Don't get me wrong. But if the mortgage-backed security space went to zero, it wasn't $1.4 trillion going to zero.
Because it was laddered up.
Then repackaged, repurposed, resold, restructured, and it was exposed to 19 different ways on the same asset. So that's why it was such a larger problem and systemic risk to the financial industry then that just doesn't exist now.
Yeah, and then the other thing, again, Melody Wright's telling everybody that 2008 is coming on steroids, and I don't get it. Because again, the other thing that happens in the credit world is, I understand it. Again, it's her world. I'm swimming in shallow water. She's deep.
You're a tourist.
Yeah, I'm a tourist, right? I'm like, I should go look there. But banks, generally speaking, and I'm assuming lenders and BDCs and all these folks, they have what's called reserve for bad debt.
Yep.
Right? They expect a percentage of these loans to go bad, and they take reserves on their balance sheet.
Yep.
So, let's say they suffer a $75 billion loss, 15% of the 600. They probably have reserved, I don't know, 40 billion, right? So really the only extra is, in that example, 35 billion. And that wasn't in, mortgage-backed securities, right? These were things that were assumed to be AAA and, all these other tranches, and there just wasn't a reserve. And you had such skinny equity that once they broke, it just like all hell broke loose.
I know a mortgage lender who I deem as a very decent person. And he said, I was issuing mortgages every single day that I knew were not good mortgages. And he said the way I justified it to myself is he was like, if I don't give it to him, they're going to go across the street and they're going to get somewhere else. And he's like, yes, I am trying to justify bad behavior. Let me be clear, but that was the justification for it. No income, no job. All the ninja, all the acronyms. In hindsight, it was like, this was bananas what was happening.
So so when you look at the private credit, again, a world that you're far more knowledgeable to me, what I hear you saying is there will be pain. There is pain. There is pain. Like it's happening right now. The pain will grow, but we're not talking anything on close to the scale of an 08, let's do a $700 billion TARP to save the banks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think what you've stated there is fundamentally on point. And I think that it's funny, like I show a lot of our clients a graph, and it shows the 75th percentile and 25th percentile manager in different spaces. So in effect, what it's showing you is a really great manager and a very mediocre manager across, and the difference in performance across stocks, bonds, real estate, and then things like private credit, et cetera. The point of this is when you look at the discrepancy between a great manager and an okay one, it's this wide when it comes to stocks, this wide when it comes to public bonds. And then you start to look at things like private equity, and it is a seismic gap. And you start to look at things like private credit, there's a seismic gap. So you really need to have expertise in the space to delineate between the strong manager that's done 24% over the past 10 years annualized and the weak manager that's done -2. Like there's a massive discrepancy there.
Got it. At the end of the day, let's kind of close this out with where we started. Are we going to experience a banking crisis 2.0, or is this just fundamentally different?
No, just fundamentally different out now. It's not to say that we can't get more noise and more short-term chop out of it. And
we should expect it, right? We should probably
we should. We should. And could we see a 5-10% correction in the market? Like the market's probably looking for some reason to do that because of where we're coming from. So it certainly can provide some reason for disruption, but to say it's going to be this washout event, I think is just blasphemy.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
Yeah, find us at Life Goal Investments. We're on Instagram and on TikTok.
Again, folks, he does something in 60 seconds that feels like 10 minutes. That's how much value he gets. Go ahead and give him.
That's how much I bore you.
No, nothing is boring. This is real money, man. This is real money. You're making real decisions. Taylor, I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks so much.